Again, this sets up a 5-alarm fire, terrifying situation in Arizona. We are going to, I hope we don't see any situation that arises from this oil and water situation we're about to go through. Hey guys, I'm Doug V. Welcome back to Reason Rises. I have a very disturbing, important update for anybody who saw my last episode or any of my last shorts, or who is wondering what your rights are and are not when it comes to dealing with the ICE squads that are roaming our streets. Guys, this, again, very disturbing, and let's just be highly accurate here. So came out sometime around 9:02 a.m. This morning. The first place I heard it from was from The Independent. So regarding ICE agents being able to come onto private property and being able to come into your home, we all know that something like that requires a valid warrant. It's been something that has made many an immigrant feel relatively safe for at least some period of time while they remain on private property, where people are saying, you agents may not come on this property without a valid warrant. We all assume that these warrants are issued by judges because that's what we see in TV shows and that's what we see in movies, and that's just, well, frankly, that's the way it's supposed to work. An internal DHS memo that was actually from, it wasn't from this year even, it's actually been in force for a while, but apparently none of us knew about it. It is a directive. I'm looking for a year here. It was dated May 12th, 2025. It was signed by the Acting Director of ICE at the time, Todd Lyons. And it says, in fact, let's go ahead and read the exact wording. Although the U.S. Department of Homeland Security has not historically relied on administrative warrants alone to arrest aliens subject to final orders of removal in their place of residence, the DHS Office of the General Counsel has recently determined that the U.S. Constitution, the Immigration and Nationality Act, and the immigration regulations do not prohibit relying on administrative warrants for this purpose. Now, those last three words are important: for this purpose. And this purpose is for aliens subject to final orders of removal in their place of residence. So the warrant does at least have to be somewhat specific, and it does have to relate to there already having been made a determination that whoever it is they're after needs to be removed from the country. Is that protection? I mean, I don't know. Who the knows these days? You know, what I do know is that there is some subset of you out there, some portion of you out there who are a little bit unclear on how something like this can happen, because the first thought, I'm sure, for the layman is to say, now, wait a second, they can't just decide that they don't need warrants from judges, right? Like, you can't just, oh, I'm just not going to follow the law. Yeah, they can. And what's really important to understand here, particularly when it comes to this administration, is that they are very ardent subscribers to the notion of don't ask permission, ask forgiveness. I'm sure you've all heard that term, or that phrase, that saying, that idiom, that maxim. What it basically means in this particular case is, until the Supreme Court steps in and stops them, and we assume they're going to follow whatever the Supreme Court says, there is nothing stopping them from, at least from a perception standpoint, essentially just breaking with the Constitution. So the way that these things work, in case you don't, I mean, so that's the headline, okay? So if you are a legal scholar, or you are already well-versed in the way our Constitution and our laws work, then feel free to shut this off, I suppose, if you want right now. Go watch some of my shorts, watch another episode of mine. Please remember to like and subscribe before you split. However, if you are not one of those people, here's the way it works in Donald Trump's America is, while that seems illegal, you do think that they have to get a warrant from a judge. When the head of one of these agencies puts forth a directive like this, or a memorandum, or various memoranda, they can do whatever they want, even if it is against the law, because what they can do is argue that the law is being misinterpreted at the ground level. Okay? So if the acting director, in this case Todd Lyons, says we no longer have to follow what we previously perceived to be the law, we are now just going to use administrative warrants. What an administrative warrant means, by the way, is it means that instead of having to go to an impartial judge who then has to look at impartial evidence and decide whether a warrant is indeed warranted, they can just go to their boss at ICE and say, this person is supposed to be removed from the country and they won't let us in their home. And the boss at ICE or at DHS, all they have to do is essentially take, the equivalent of an affidavit from the officer stating that they need to get into this home, and they can just sign off on a warrant and give it to the officer, and the officer then has the right, at least according to policy, to go into your home to retrieve that alien. This is going to lead to raids, or I'm sure already has. I mean, it was signed in May of 2025. So this is going to, and probably already has, led to situations where people are screaming up and down, you need to have, so-and-so kind of warrant, and the officers are saying, no, we do not. Get the fuck out of my way. I'm after, your friend back there. So this is a dangerous, scary thing, to say the least. But the legal process here, what's going to happen is at some point, someone is going to have gone through one of those raids, which was subject to this particular new policy. They're going to bring a lawsuit against DHS or ICE for having used this policy. It may even wind up being a class action, although I have to clarify whether a class action would even be available as a remedy in this case. But either way, someone's going to bring a lawsuit if they already haven't. That lawsuit has to work its way up to the Supreme Court, who then has to decide whether there was something illegal about the way ICE was going about things in this particular case. In the meantime, it's open season for them. I mean, in the meantime, they are unrestricted from just using the equivalent of your 5-year-old just writing on a piece of paper, I get to come in your home, ha ha ha, and then being able to come into your house. I mean, it's basically that simple. If you are harboring somebody that they have a removal order for. This is not good, guys, but it's a very important update. You need to know about it. You need to know that it's true. If they are saying it through the door, you're saying, do you have a judge's warrant? And they're saying, we have an administrative warrant. You can no longer say, well, I mean, you can argue all you want, but the fact is they're going to break your door down. They're going to get into the house and they're going to come after that person, period. So be forewarned, guys. I'm not going to give legal advice, and I'm certainly not going to advise anybody to break the law. What I am going to advise people to do is to be very, very careful and understand that if you are, for any reason, harboring one of these people, or if you are one of these people who is hiding in their home, assuming that they at least have to jump over the hurdle of getting a judge's warrant, know that that is not the case. And that if you need to change locations, or if your friend needs to change locations, do what you got to do, I suppose. Again, I'm not advising anybody to break the law, or certainly not advising anybody to evade law enforcement. What I am advising people to do is be careful, understand your rights, understand what are not your rights, and understand that this is something that, as mentioned in my previous episode, you can sue for later. Um, so that's it on that. Very important development. One other thing, though, that I wanted to bring up, there are rumblings that Arizona, where I live, is going to be the next state that is going to face Minnesota-style takeover, whatever the word is. Arizona is a stand your ground state, and just about all of us are armed. I mean, I don't know very many people, Democrat or Republican, at least in my area, who are not armed. We are all at least gun owners, let's put it that way. Some of us own many more than one gun. And in Arizona, if a person in a mask who refuses to identify themselves shows up at your door and tries banging it down, you have every right to stand your ground. That means you will not be prosecuted if you are afraid for your life or your property or of getting harmed, and you shoot somebody and kill them. That's very, very scary. That sets up some bad situations between the public and these ICE agents if they do show up here. But even worse than that, the way that our laws are written, we have some of the broadest self-defense laws in the United States. And our stand your ground law extends beyond our property into public. So that means that even if we're in a public space, such as Renee Good was, or such as that pastor was, who was screaming up at the building and got shot in the face with the beanbag. In our state, even if we're not on our property, even if we're in public, if someone comes to assault us or harm us or for that matter, kill us or kidnap us or, anything without identifying themselves as a law enforcement officer, we technically have every right to defend ourselves with our firearms. Again, this sets up a five-alarm fire, terrifying situation in Arizona. We are going to, I hope we don't see any situation that arises from this oil and water situation we're about to go through. I pray to God not. But knowing the place that I live and knowing the people amongst whom I live and knowing the way ICE agents are behaving lately, this is a recipe for disaster. I would advise all of my fellow Arizonans, be careful. Ask them to identify themselves. Do not assume that because we have a stand your ground law, you are going to avoid prosecution and be able to just shoot an ICE agent. Don't do that, dude. It's, I mean, let's be honest with ourselves here. Although they are not identifying themselves, it is generally pretty clear who they're working for, the way that they're behaving, the clothes that they're wearing. Now, the other thing is Arizona is full of militias. And my area in particular is really full of militias. And if a militia were to go out on raids or try to help ICE or something like that in an illegal manner, we wouldn't know the difference unless they identify themselves. We don't, if masked thugs show up at our door, we do not know, is this a militia who is just playing cowboy and they're trying to help DHS in a misguided effort, or is it actual DHS agents? We don't know. So the mass confusion this is going to cause, and the fact that the laws on their end and the laws on our end allow for so much ambiguity and allow for, let's be frank, violence. Guys, I mean, I don't know what to say. I I pray that no one in Arizona is going to wind up starting some kind of a weird backward Democrat instead of Republican Ruby Ridge or Malheur Reserve situation, um, because or for that matter Waco. This is something that could turn very, very dangerous very, very quickly for all the parties involved, and would set up something very confusing for the American people to go through. So just those two important developments, guys, I wanted to get those out, and I think it's important to get them out. I know I don't have the world's most subscribers or listeners yet, although I want to thank you guys so much. My numbers are flying up. Had just about 13,000 views, including my shorts in the last 28 days. So that's something. I'm able to reach some folks, and that's really important to me, because I consider myself a broadcaster first, but an educator second. And I hope somebody's learning something here, and I hope that my audience is starting to learn that you can trust me, that I don't lie, that I may misspeak, and when I do, there is a correction at the bottom of the screen or in the description. And I hope you guys are learning that if there's anybody on the internet I can trust, it's Doug V. That's my goal, and I'm uncompromising on it, and I always will be, no matter how many sponsors I wind up getting, or no matter how big this channel gets. You will always, always, I promise you this until my dying day, you will be able to trust what I say, or at least know that I'm not deliberately lying to you, like a lot of people are just for clicks. So that's why I'm very much intent on letting my channel grow in an organic fashion. I think that's just crucial for the trust factor. So thank you guys for being here. Stay safe out there. Knowledge is power, guys. Knowledge is power, and voting is power. The power of the voting booth is so, so important. And just because we're not voting for president next time, trust me, this is going to be despite that fact, this is going to be one of the most important elections we have ever gone through. If we can switch the House and the Senate, which is entirely within the reach of the Democratic Party, we will have the power, and by we, I mean the people of the United States, will suddenly have the power to put a stop to some of what's going on, or at the very least, legislate against it. So stay safe out there. Vote. Like, subscribe, comment, share, please. This is an important one, guys. Stay safe. And I will see you soon here on Reason Rises with myself, Doug V.